Where's your favorite place to take college game day? And I say every time, Eugene, Oregon.
Hello and welcome, Ducks fans, where and whenever you are watching or listening. This is the Once a Duck podcast, where we bring you up to date with current and former University of Oregon athletes and give you never-before-heard stories about your favorite teams and moments in Duck history. I'm your host, Nick Cody. With me always, my co-host, Sam Tidrick-Smith. And this last game against Utah was definitely going to be one of my favorite moments in Duck history. It's not what either of us predicted. Thankfully, you were very off, Sam. Our prediction of Ty Thompson getting a start did not happen. Well, technically in the second half. Forgettable. But man, what an overall impressive performance from our defense. Holding Utah to just 10 points. We were both there just to see it. Sam, what are you going to take away from that game?
Man, I am so glad to have been wrong about that ball game. The minute, and I mean it, the moment that game was getting ready to start and number 10 took the field, that Autzen crowd might not have been louder all night long. Everyone in the building knew what that meant. I knew what that meant. Just the excitement of knowing that Oregon was going to be able to have that caliber player playing at quarterback all game long. It felt fantastic. Nick, it was such a fun ball game, a cold one, a frigid evening in Eugene, but fun as always. Really, really love that atmosphere, that environment. Great ball game.
Yeah, I mean, not a great offensive ball game. And if you would have told me going into the game that Oregon would not get even up to 100 yards of rushing and that Bo Nix would be basically an immobile version of himself. Oh, man. I don't know if I would have told you that we would have been able to pull this one off, but the way our defensive line, Bennett Williams having the game of his life right when we needed it, man, it just had a little bit of everything. And you're right, it was damn cold, but man, Autzen was heated up, kept that team fired up and ready and in it. And you knew right from that first drive, it felt like, everything could be clicking for us tonight.
Well, that first drive was a really, really good drive for Oregon, and that, of course, it ended in points, but also they were able to set in motion the game plan that kind of carried them throughout that ball game, which was always going to be hand it off or quick release from an empty backfield. And it's immediately what Oregon was going with. On that first drive, Chris Hudson got involved super early. He was the recipient of a lot of those screen passes. But at that end of the drive, Bucky Irving came up huge, caught a beautiful screen pass, and then the next play, a touchdown, running inside, bounces it out to the left. Oh my goodness, Nick, it was right in front of where I was. A beautiful touchdown for Bucky Irving right there just to get the night started. 7-0 Oregon.
Yeah, man. And, unfortunately, it wasn't all that easy from there. Utah really buckled down, made some adjustments. But like I said, again, our defense came out, and especially the defensive front played with a different level of energy. They made it difficult all night, and the offense didn't necessarily put them in easy situations. In fact, it was pretty frustrating to, as I had mentioned, see the points given up there in the beginning of the third quarter, because Oregon's been so good traditionally right there at the end of the first half, at the beginning of the third. And you understood with Thornton how the day he was. You definitely wanted to give him the football, but not at the expense of that play, Sam.
Well, Dante Thornton had 2 fumbles, but also had 2 of the most magnificent catches I've seen all season so far. He is one of several players I have down as player of the game, kind of player like worthy of headline from this ball game. He was a big one there. I also had Chris Hudson for what he did in the screen game. Bo Nix for just the toughness and how he was able to show up 25 of 37, 287, a touchdown and interception as well. But A unit that I would love to hear from you about is this offensive line. They have two guys that I was sure to write down the names of on here. Number one, Stephen Jones being back in that lineup, such an immediate impact. It was so obvious how he was helping from his left guard position there. And then also Ryan Walk, a guy who got injured last week, was in a boot at the end of the game last week, stepping up, shifting over, playing center this week against Utah. Tell us a little bit about what you saw from that group, the shifting that occurred and what they ended up doing against Utah.
Well, yeah, obviously, it was really good to see Stephen Jones back in there. He'd been hurt most of the season since that Eastern Washington game, and man, yeah, him filling in there right, and no real warm up, kind of cold in the moment, just shows you how much preparation, maturity, and experience he has to be able to be able to just thrown in the lineup at that moment with a backup center already. The communication you have to have there is so important on the field. That leadership at center is key to everything the Oregon offense has done ever since I've been watching them. And it's huge to think that you have that much faith in a guy that used to be a walk-on that has matured, developed under, Mario Cristobal and Coach Clem now. And you have the confidence of him not only going out there and taking over, but doing it when he's not 100%, not even close. And hopefully we can get Forsyth back this week for the Beavers. But yeah, it was just really impressive. And overall, that's been a regular theme about this team's offensive line is even when they are not at 100%, they've been gutsy and they've done a damn good job, especially protecting Bo Nix when he had limited rollout opportunities. He getting flushed out of the pocket was not necessarily an option. So they had to be really, really solid in pass protection, and the running the game was not going to be that effective against Utah. So just the athleticism, the ability to communicate, and overall the toughness up front. It's been showing every game, but it really needs to show in November. Man, that's the only way you beat the former Pac-12 champions is you got to beat them in the trenches.
Well, now let's talk about the other line, the defensive line for the Oregon Ducks. Their best performance of the season, in my opinion, as a whole. You had guys on the edge like Dorless and like Johnson getting in there and causing problems, but for me, it was the interior of the line that really shone. Specifically, Casey Rogers just having the game of his season: 5 total tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss, a batted down pass, and a quarterback hurry. All huge and at huge moments. What were you seeing from him? What were you seeing from that entire unit for the Ducks?
Oh man, and shout out to him, Jordan Riley. Saw Taki in there a little bit. The entire D line, though, I think they really looked at the Washington tape and the inability to get pressure on Penix, and they challenged themselves this week to have that much more presence in the game. And the tip balls, those led to interceptions. Those led to Cam Rising not feeling comfortable the entire night. It was you could tell Cam Rising was battling a lot more than just the Autzen crowd and the Autzen Stadium, but the D line was bringing it the entire night. One of my favorite plays, though, was on the Bennett interception. Casey Rogers just going up there and just picking him straight off the ground like a baby. I mean, man, the power that guy has, and he was finally playing with it in key moments, getting to make huge plays. And that's what he came to Oregon for, he says in the interviews. And I love seeing that guy out there making plays. And yeah, pressure off the edge. It just felt like, they looked at the UW tape and those guys kind of bragging about not giving up any pressure after the game and just said, hey, what can we do to do better? And you could tell in just their activity, just constantly fighting off blocks, trying to get to the football. And man, they made the center's life for Utah a living hell. He was not able to get off to linebackers, freeing up Noah in right there. Another guy I want to give the shout out to is Justin Flo on the tip ball, knowing exactly the rules that you can just go and lay out that wide receiver. I mean, maybe he knew the rules. Maybe that's just the Justin Flo we all know and love, and he's just instinctive like that. But really, really well coached play right there. And it had, as a Utah fan, that had to just make your heart sink right there, especially because it came right after a Oregon fumble. Big play. You think, okay, we're going to get it back, get something going. No, immediately tip ball, interception. And that's a tough way to start a drive.
When you talk about Bennett Williams right there, he had an absolutely huge day. 14 total tackles, 7 solo, half a tackle for loss. A couple of those tackles, I'm not gonna lie to you, Nick. They were the type of play where you see him make contact, and then about 4 yards later, the tackle is completed. And in the first half, one or two of those started to get on my nerves. But my goodness, when he stepped up so big in this ball game. 2 interceptions. The one, as you mentioned, right after the fumble. But another one, the other one that I think just so huge, it came late in the fourth quarter, stepping in front of Kincaid on that little crossing route he had. And it was because it came after the Clarks-Phillips interception. Both of Williams' big defensive plays came after an offensive error. And look, if you're going to play a team like Utah under the circumstances that Oregon was playing them, you have to be able to, if you make a mistake, correct that mistake. And Oregon was able to correct those mistakes throughout the game super effectively. One more guy I want to talk about because he's an All-American. He gets a lot of credit, but he probably had his best all-around ball game against Utah, and that'd be Noah Sewell. 8 total tackles, 4 solo, 2 tackle for loss. He was everywhere in this ball game. I think the way Duck fans have been waiting to see him play.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of those plays, the center or whoever they're pushing to in the zone gap schemes is not able to get over there. And Noah Sewell able to come out and, I think this season, a lot of people have been wondering why his stats weren't more improved, but I think he's definitely been a playmaker every week. It's just this time we were able to schematically throw off a lot of Utah's blocking schemes where they just weren't able to get to our linebackers because they could barely handle the down linemen.
Well, and so many more of those down linemen deserve credit. You said Riley, Taka, Funa actually went out and had a really big game for himself as well. There was a lot of guys out there performing this week, but I think it's a tale of two halves, really. The offense just did everything they possibly could do in that first half, getting those 17 points. And then second half, they mustered 3 points, but it was the 3 points that they needed to be able to muster there. I think also Oregon's offense deserve a lot of credit for being able to kill the game as they were. Utah one time of possession, but Oregon's offense just stayed out there longer than even I thought they should have on several drives, several different big plays that occurred. A couple of the late ones that really stick out to me. Think about Noah Whittington out of the backfield being able to pick up a huge first down when Oregon needed it. But I want to ask you about the first half, Nick. When you're up in the stands, you're watching how Oregon has come out and played. Let's just say that second touchdown drive that results in a touchdown to Troy Franklin. What were you seeing that they were able to take advantage of in Utah's defense that despite the fact that Bo Nix is slow and limited, they were able to pick up pretty good chunk plays?
Well, man, I think it's tough because they really were limited. It was like playing with one hand tied behind your back. And I think what you really saw on the Troy Franklin was timing, being right there in the red zone and being able to know that you can get the space to essentially get off the football with a quick pass, not really worry too much about, knowing that they're going to commit so hard to the handoff. And if you do pull it, at least there's not that guy sitting there waiting like you normally would. So they had to adjust, and just the release on the ball there, the timing, and Franklin not having as big a day as maybe we expected, with Thornton really picking up a lot of the slack on the offense in the passing game was, like they were definitely clued in on that, but that was a clear timing route. I'm not sure if it was a full RPO because it sounds like a lot of the things that were either options or reads before they were completely taking out of this game, just because until honestly we needed the first down at the end, running Bo just really wasn't an option.
Well, and I loved that Franklin touchdown because it really was a one-on-one rep against a cornerback that will absolutely be playing on Sundays in Clarks-Phillips. He had the interception. He was playing big throughout the night. And then being able to see Troy Franklin just go beat him on that one play, the little hesitation and inside, got in there, got the positioning, did a great job of protecting the ball with his body, made the grab, touchdown Oregon. I think throughout this game, Nick, we saw Oregon come up exactly doing what they needed to when they needed to do it. I think that was a big part of this game. We're just being able to make those kind of plays. And the last person that I had on my list of big players throughout this game, he did exactly that. And it's Camden Lewis. 2 of 2 on extra points, 2 of 2 on field goals. Both field goals Very, very important. I think a 44-yarder included. Love to see his confidence, what he's done throughout this year, and just the kind of plays he's been able to generate.
Yep, and it's good to see him get back on the path. And technically, the game deciding, but I know in the post game interview he didn't want to call it a game winner. But hey, good to see him get back on track. That kick against UW into the win there was frustrating, but he's not letting it beat him twice, and that's important right there. And man, I'm sure it's not that easy being a kicker in that situation with that type of weather, because just us being there bundled up in the stadium, it was like, all right, man, I'm getting cold just standing here. So when shout start?
Like Oregon, big win. They were able to get it. Glad they were able to get it. Obviously, we're so excited to be able to have both seen that game in person. And I think the moment that stuck out the most to me, as well as probably a lot of other Duck fans, is that last first down gain. 3rd down and 1. You've got nobody in the backfield until Whittington gets called back in there. It's that option shovel play. They run it at the end. And in interviews, Lanning had said, or I believe it was either Lanning or Nix had been asked about that play, and they had responded with the fact that Nix had just been asked, hey, are you going to be able to run this? And he was just overly confident. Oh yeah, I can get this. I can go get this. And I'm so glad that he was on that play. As we said, Whittington comes into the backfield, that little option shovel. The moment he options it out there, he just puts the ball out slightly for a second. Every single Utah defender sprints toward Whittington, change of direction, everybody. He falls forward thanks to a block from Jones, thanks to a couple other blocks. What did you see on that play? Talk about the blocking, the play call, an amazing moment there for Oregon late.
Oh man, you just need to pick up the first down. Speed option and that kind of thing. It's not my short yardage go-to call. But I'm pretty stubborn. I like to get some pullers around, get some movement up front. But it's just all about communication up front, knowing who you're working to from your point on. And that means the center has to point out who they're working towards, and then you got to know who your pitch guy is. So quarterback's got his eyes on whoever the end man on the line of scrimmage is, and you're basically just like you said, with that little fake motion there, you're just begging them to bite on it. And as soon as they do, you take the yards you can get down. And very, very smart of Nick's not trying to hit the burners and take any unnecessary hits, but just get what you need to get and get down. But there are a couple opportunities there. Even Noah had the opportunity before to pick that up and kind of slid down, and don't know if he lost track of where he was on the field or from where you're at on the other side. Sometimes those change in that first down marker look a lot different. So, we could have picked it up down, made it a lot less dramatic, but it was nice. And you see the offensive lineman help him up, give him a big hug. And it's when you knew it's over, and everything that Oregon's really wanted out of this season is still right in front of them.
Still right in front of them is the best way to put it. The Oregon Ducks coming up this weekend, Oregon State, 12:30, ABC. That will be the game where Oregon can really take a grasp on that last Pac-12 championship spot or not. Anything else you've got on this Utah game, Nick? Because I know it was just so much fun. It was a great game to be a part of, a 3-point win. Just to have been able to be there was awesome.
Yeah, I don't know what more needs to be said about the game. It just not just the toughness of Bo Nix, but how that's kind of perpetuated through this entire team, playing through a lot of injuries, through a lot of changes, and then coming off a really tough loss. There's a lot of ways that can go. So the thing is you got to keep it rolling, got to keep on going. And my favorite part that wasn't about the game, but the post game press conference. We had discussed it last week, but Lanning ending that by kind of deferring all injury talk to Chris Hudson was a pro move, and he had everybody busting up there in the media room. So I loved and appreciated that. Love our coaching staff. Love their ability to go out there and really take all the criticisms from the fans, everybody out there, and themselves, and turn that around and go and get a win against a tough Utah team.
Well, that's just what they did. And yeah, that was the perfect way to end that interview. I know he said on the podcast last week, hey, this is either going to be a really rough moment or one of the best interviews we've ever seen. And I'm going to give him the credit. Turns out it was one of the best interviews we ever saw.
Exactly. And speaking of which, I think we're about to talk to somebody who might give us one of our best interviews of all time. We've had a few of them this season. It feels like we've been knocking them out of the park. But joining us now, former Oregon defensive end, Saul Patu. With us now, former Oregon defensive end, Saul Patu. Saul, one of the things I remember is right when I was coming into Oregon, you were retiring from professional football. What was it like to come back and be a guest speaker in some of the Coach Bellotti and Chip Kelly teams? And what's it like for you to pass on your experience to current Ducks now?
Man, it's everything, I mean, at the end of the day, you're always going to be a Duck. And so, you look back and, you hope, when I came in, there were older guys that put me on, and they kind of showed me the ropes and introduced me to people outside of the campus. And, you start to realize, like, it's a fraternity, it's a family, it's a brotherhood. And so, you got to pay it forward. It's not even a question. I get Ducks that will hit me up on LinkedIn and things like that. And, I could tell, like, they're trying to test the waters, kind of put some fillers out there to see if, what's going to happen, and kind of being, they're good, right? They're professional. They're being courteous. And I just kind of cut to the chase and like, yo, whatever you're going to ask me, it's already a yes. So I just need to know how I can help and how to support. So don't even feel like you got to go through the formalities. Like, we're family.
So it's great to have you on here. It's great to talk to a guy, especially somebody from the Northwest, on such a big game like this. Growing up in Seattle, Washington, being a star in high school up there, what brought you to the University of Oregon? What really drew you toward the team and the campus back when you were about to be a freshman?
It was the players, it was the players. Growing up, I've got an interesting story. I've always loved to compete, love sports. But I grew up in a tough neighborhood up in Seattle, and, in this area of Seattle, everybody played sports, everybody competed. But there were other things going on in the environment that, that were what was a distraction. And so, sports helped me to kind of stay focused and stay on that path. And so once I got to, to Oregon, and, luckily, with the support of many people, you start to lock in and realize, like, oh man, like, there's something bigger out there, there's something more out there than the world that I'm used to. And I wanted to investigate that. And thankfully it was Oregon. And, it's been amazing ever since. And, like I said, it's family. And so, that connection and those relationships are so important.
Now, we've got a big rivalry game this week with our Oregon State, formerly known as the Civil War. You, as a four-year starter, played in a lot of big games. What do you remember about going against the Beavers, and what memories stick out from your playing time?
Man, when you first get on the campus, that's kind of a thing, right? Especially back then. I didn't see many Beaver things sold in Eugene back then. It seems like the business side of it has been a little bit more accepting, but it was a hate. It was a hate on hate relationship. You weren't supposed to like the Beavers, and interesting enough, the Beavers were actually one of the first schools to offer me coming out. They were the first recruiting trip that I took out of high school. And so they kind of, I kind of was learning how to be playing this type of rivalry game, and so it was the older guys that kind of helped, kind of develop that vibe coming in and how important it is. And so, it was a lot of fun. I tell you what, it was always a tough game, and it didn't matter what the records were. Those guys were coming, and they wanted to win that game. We wanted to win that game, obviously, but it was always extra. There was always extra stuff going on the field. A few things said here and there, in passing that I won't repeat, but it's always a battle.
Saul, you mentioned that first recruiting trip to Corvallis. I'm sure you took one to Eugene and other schools as well. back when you were a senior in high school or junior in high school, what did those recruiting trips look like? We see them a lot now in 2022 with guys posting everything on social media and stuff like that. But what did that recruiting trip look like back when you were taking it?
Man, I think, looking back, and again, this is just my experience, right? It was bigger than I feel like it is now. There are so many guys that visit campuses now. There are so many, I've never seen as many unofficials that get taken versus when I was growing up. I didn't take any unofficials. I took zero, I went to one camp in high school. I went to UW, right? I was I'm from Seattle. So I went to UW's camp it was actually something that I didn't even know about. I didn't even know that they did, and so it was one of those things where once I got to the camp, I realized what was going on, a lot of competition. And I realized I wasn't ready for college. And so I went back to the lab and made a decision with the help of a lot of supportive people that actually probably believed in me more than I believed in myself. And, it's kind of set on a path to say, why not? Why can't I compete at that level, and started working hard, and things ended up working out. But those recruiting trips, I mean, they were amazing, man. I went to Oregon State. The guy that recruited me, rest in peace, O'Shea Lewis, he passed away, but he recruited me, and I wasn't interested in really, I was still trying to figure out if I even wanted to go to college. And he was like, you know what, just look at it like a vacation, paid vacation. You don't have to pay for anything. I said, whoa, wait a second. I don't have to pay for anything? He's like, no. He's like, we're going to take care of the airplanes, the meals, everything. And then we'll fly you back. I said, sounds good to me. So I took the trip. Man, thank God I took that trip, because I was inspired, to just investigate college in general. And, I ended up going to LSU. I went to, it was the first time I had crawfish etouffee. First time I had jambalaya. It was a whole nother world down there. Went to Utah. They weren't a part of the pack at that time, which is a big problem for me, because, there's a story to that if you want to get into that. But I really despised UW at this time in the recruiting process. And I said, Coach, and I probably, if they were in the pack, I probably would have went to Utah, but they weren't at the time. And I'm like, yo, I can't, I gotta play UW every year. Like, I have to play UW every year. Whatever school I go to, we're playing UW every year. And so that was one of the deciding factors in why I didn't go there. I went to Oregon, canceled my 5th trip, because as soon as I finished the Eugene trip, I already knew where I was going. And so I canceled my 5th trip, and yeah, it's been amazing ever since.
Well, since you touched on it, and I'm probably, as a fellow Washingtonian, one of the biggest Washington haters out there. I got to know where does the beef stem from? Is it their fan base? Is it the purple and gold? Well, the gold really does it for me, but what part of it is it for you?
Man, I went to a camp there, and I kind of talked a little bit about it earlier. I was gang banging, man. I was into the streets. I had good parents, but we lived in a tough environment. And, it's one of those things where when you're growing up in the jungle, man, you got to figure out what you want to be. You want to be the tiger, or, what like, how are you socially, how are you going to survive? And, I just chose to be a tiger at the time and go meet up and link up with the rest of the tigers, and I made some bad choices, but I was trying to figure things out, right? I was trying to figure things out on my own. And I ended up, thank God, my mom ended up getting me a scholarship to this camp. And if I didn't get a scholarship, I probably would have never went to that camp. But I went to the camp, and thankfully I did. But when I went to the camp, it was a bunch of kids from Rainier Beach, and my mom went out and basically got scholarships and fundraised for myself and like six other guys at my high school. And none of us could afford to go, to the camp. And so it was one of those things where it's like, yeah, we're going to go represent Rainier Beach. Rainier Beach kids typically don't come to these types of camps at this time. And so we go to the dorm and we check in, and it's just new, man. It's just a whole new world. And it's exciting, and we're getting ready to compete. Well, we get to like first day, goes great. We're competing, right? Things are going good. Second day, we're competing, things are going good. And then there's somebody smoking weed in the dorms. And it's somebody on our floor. But it's not us, and we have a pretty good idea on who it is. And and looking back on it now, I didn't know this, I didn't even know the difference between a coach and a GA, right? But I'm pretty sure it was one of the GAs that was checking the dorms, and he literally just blamed us. He was like, hey man, you guys, blah, blah, blah. So he went in on us, and they were talking about sending us home. And it was just kind of a little bit humiliating, at the time. And we were, we were that school that probably would have did that, but it wasn't this time. You know what I mean? We were trying to be good kids. And so he blamed us. He blamed it on us, man. And it was, I was young and I was immature at the time too. So I didn't know how to take that, man. So I left the camp. I just left. I split. I called somebody up to have them come pick me up, and I had heard that I was actually, doing well and potentially up for one of the MVPs of the camp. And so I was a sophomore at the time. And I guess it obviously left an impression on the program. And they were quoted when I was getting recruited, fast forward, right, to my senior year, when I was getting recruited, they had not offered me, and I had gotten offers from, Washington State, Oregon State, Utah, I was getting all these offers from schools and interest from schools. And here I am, right? I'm right in Seattle, inner city Seattle, right down the street is UW, and they didn't even bat an eye. And so I didn't think anything of it. Wasn't that big of a deal. Well, the interview reporter interviewed, and I think it might have been the Seattle Times, but they interviewed one of the coaches and they asked them about, hey, what about this kid at Rainier Beach? And it's been a while, right? So don't quote me exact word for word, but I remember them saying he wasn't disciplined enough for our program. And that just hurt me, man. That hurt me because I felt like, man, I was trying, you know what I mean? Like I was trying to do right. I was trying to get my stuff together and, trying to find my way. And they had no idea, like, why I left that camp. You know what I mean? I was immature, obviously. I could have just, talked to somebody about it, obviously. And it would have most likely been fine. But, they made an assumption and then they put it out there. Polynesian families, man, we're very prideful, when it comes to our families. And, to put that out there, to me, I felt like it embarrassed, our family, my family. So I said, okay, all right, all good. Like, please let me I got to finish up my academics. I got to make sure my grades were a little rough, right? But I made it, I did what I needed to do to make it and find some place that was gonna play UW. But it was more than that too. The team, everything. It was the vibe. It was just like, yo, we all down here we want to do something special. We want to do something that nobody's ever done before here at this school. And it went well with me, man. I was that kind of guy, like, hey, if we're gonna change the world, let's do it, And we set off on that mission to do that, coming in. And it's interesting enough, it kind of, if you look at the records, right, things were changing, right? Things were changing. We would have these team meetings and, we would, Bilotti would ask us, hey, what do you guys want to change? How do you think we can get better, right? And of course, nobody better to ask than the players, right? It's a player's game. And so we had all these ideas. We're like, man, uniforms, changing the uniforms, all this stuff started happening. These conversations started happening. We need a nutritionist. My boy goes to Nebraska. They got a nutritionist. They got national championships over there. We want to win a national championship, blah, 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 all this stuff, man. And, you know, crazy enough, they listen to us. You know, they listen to us. And we got a nutritionist. The problem with the first year is when they got the nutritionist, I think the word was, you know, she was a nutritionist for like normal humans. not people, not humans that burn as many calories as we do. And so the plans were, you know, I don't think they might have, you know, they didn't align as well. And so they ended up, you know, bringing in another nutritionist that did really, really well there, and was there through the Chip Kelly years. I think his name was James
Harris.
Yeah, James Harris. Yeah. And so we were talking about that stuff because we had heard Nebraska had these cards, and they just go in and show the color card. And if you need to lose weight, then you only can eat these things. If you need to gain weight, and I think James came from Nebraska, right?
Yes, he did.
Crazy, man. Crazy. I remember this meeting like it was yesterday. You know, guys were like, yo, I talked to my boy at Nebraska, man. They got this, right? And we're like, man, we got to compete. For us to compete with these guys, we got to have the same supports as these guys. Because if it comes down to just putting in the work, man, we can't complain, right? It's just who's going to outwork who. So sorry for the long-winded answer.
Oh, love it.
No, we are a big fan of long-winded answers on this show. I'll tell you that much right now. You kind of mentioned it right there, Saul, but it's an important point to make. You were at the program at a really important time because it's right as things were starting to transition into the Oregon football program we've seen play out over the last 20 years or so. I guess my question to you would be, when you talk about the nutritionist and things like that, what were some of the other things changing around the program and changing around campus that kind of gave you that insight that things were going to be different in Eugene?
I mean, at the end of the day, when you play better, right? The saying is when you play better, they pay better. And so we had to focus on playing better, you know, and not just on the field. We had to play better in the classroom. We had to play better, you know, on campus, just socially. We just had to be about being great at what we did, at, you know, just in general as people. And when that mindset starts to change, right, it changes how you get treatment. It changes how you show up to meetings. You know, it changes, you know, how you do your dynamic warm up, right? It just changes everything. And so you start to see the attention to detail. You start to you know, see how we respond, and our feedback, our questions that we ask, they end up being, you know, higher quality questions in our meetings, and you know what I mean. And so those things all came down to the players, you know, making a decision on what we wanted. And it's like, well, if you want this, you got to do this. And so if you're not willing to do these things, you can't sit up here and ask for these things, right? And so I think that ultimately, for me, I think was the biggest difference is that, you know, we were having very strategic, intentional conversations as players. And when we came to compete, man, we were competing in the weight room. You know, when I first got there, man, I seen dudes cheating on their workouts, you know, and I'm like, it is as ironic as it is in the decisions that I grew up in, some of the decisions I made growing up, you know, that bothered me, you know. It's like, yo, what you doing? Like, you just cheat on your workout. And crazy thing, man, I started to do it I remember one time I did it and I just didn't feel right. It didn't feel right. It's just like, if I'm gonna do this, why am I even here? You know what I mean? I'm wasting my time. If I'm willing to cheat on a workout, I'm wasting everybody's time. I'm wasting my time, and I wasted all the people's time that supported me and believed in me and invested in me as a young man when I didn't believe in myself. And so we can't do this, you know. And so you know, it really, I think, you know, campus wise, all that stuff is all secondary, right? To the players, you know, having the resolve and the leadership rising to the top and saying, yo, we're not doing this, and being willing to say it, you know, and hold people accountable. And even if it means, you know, if we might have to fight about it, you know, it's a locker room thing. We might have to fight, but you're not going to cheat. You ain't going to cheat us. You ain't going to cheat yourself. And if you are, you're not going to do it as a member of this team. And so I just think, you know, that all happens over barbecues and, you know what I mean? Like, you got to have those times, right? There's a saying I like to say, you know, that I heard from a good mentor of mine: rules without relationship equal rebellion. And so if you don't have that relationship, you can't expect things out of guys. You know, you can't tell them, man, yo, you can't jack them when they need to be jacked. You know, you got to have the relationship, because if they know it comes from love, they know, you know, man, that's my guy, it's my brother. He wouldn't tell me that if he didn't care about me. You know, guys sometimes don't process it all the time, but they feel it. You know, they know it, and so they comply because they know it's the right thing to do.
Well, I think it's really interesting you say that, with, you know, saying earlier how you guys had set out to do things that hadn't been done before. And your senior year, you did that when you set the single season records for tackles for a loss with 21. What do you remember about your senior season the most? And what's it like to be that guy on the defensive side of the football that other Pac-10 schools are game planning for and scheming for?
Man, crazy enough, man. And it's probably not, I don't know if this is what people want to hear, but man, what I remember about my senior year, first and foremost, was that going into my senior year, I got married. You know what I mean? I got married, and that was a big deal for me because, you know, met my wife. She was a softball player there, formerly Alana Burns. And I remember going into the season just feeling like, okay, I married the woman of my dreams. You know, we'll start a family, right? We'll get to those things, but I got to lock in on this season. And it's crazy because I look back and I've got we got 4 kids, and one graduated from college, 2 are currently in college. One is a college recruit right now. Oldest is a girl. Then we got 3 boys, and all 3 play football, right? So going through this, you know, it was one of those things where I look back and I'm like, man, I graduated in June. My season was in the fall, so I graduated early, right? When you think of the 4 years to play, or 5 years to play for, and so I wish I would have went and got my master's degree. Right. That's something I look back on when I think of my senior year. Now I'm talking as a guy in his mid-40s, right? I wish I would have got my master's degrees, because in my logic, in my thinking, I thought it was a better idea to take golf classes. I was like, you know what? I'm graduated. I'm going to take some golf classes, and I'm going to really focus all my energies on football, right? But as a player, you know, looking back, you know, you can't work out all day. You can't study film all day, right? And so I should have got that master's degree and going into it. Now, coming back now, thinking of the football stuff, I remember us playing Wisconsin, and that place was rocking. You know, we came in and it was red everywhere. You know, our buses driving by, you know, their version of Greek Row. And I mean, I think it was morning, man. And there's this beer bong tube coming from the roof and all the way down to the lawn. And we're seeing guys literally chugging beer at 9 o'clock in the morning or whenever it was, coming to the game, and they were fired up. And, you know, I'm the type of guy where, man, I'm juiced. Like, I'm sitting there like, yo, yes, what a, like in my mind, right? This is a great place to whoop these guys' tail with all this activity going on and everything. Like, they're going to be highly upset when we get done with these guys. So we go out and we get out to that stadium, man, and they're playing Jump Around, House of Pain, right? Yeah. and the whole stadium is literally jumping. It was like they had like a jump coordinator or something, man. They were all jumping in, and I looked around, and we hadn't. Now we kind of got that going on now at Autzen, but we didn't have that kind of coordination back then, right? And so I'm looking around the stadium, and I'm just like, oh man, like let's go, like let's go. So we get out there, we're competing, and we're killing them. You know what I mean? Like defensively, we're killing them, man. I think there were like 30, it was something crazy, like 40 yards or something on like 32 carries. I mean, we were doing what we came in there, which was to stop the run. Michael Bennett was their running back at the time. Ended up going on to be a first round pick to the Vikings. And things were going well. And then this dude had like three runs for like 290 yards. It's like something crazy. Like one, like you hit a crease out, like 80 yards, hit another crease out, another 80 yards. And so it was just a few plays. And so that was super disappointing because you know how far Wisconsin is from Oregon. That plane ride back was disappointing. Like I think I stood up the whole time. I was in the back and I just was standing the whole time because I was just like, yo, we only lost by, I want to say we might have lost by, I mean, it wasn't big, right? It was like maybe a possession. It might have been 2, but it wasn't by a lot. And we had 3 turnovers, you know what I mean? And so that was rough because to almost win the game and to have 3 turnovers is, usually unheard of, right? 3 turnovers usually is a sign that you're going to lose, right? So that was the one, game wise, what I remember. And then I remember losing the dang Oregon State. And we lost to Oregon State my senior year. And I think, if I remember correctly, we had 5 turnovers. Yeah. So it was not good, man. And they had to their credit, I mean, they had a talented team, right? They went 11-1. We were a 3-way tie. They beat UW beat them. They beat us, and we beat UW, right? And so UW went to the Rose Bowl, played Purdue and Drew Brees and those guys. Oregon State went to the Fiesta and played a bunch of dudes that they had over at Notre Dame. And then we ended up going to the Holiday Bowl and playing Texas, which I'm actually happy. I mean, I would have been happy with any of the bowl games, but, we played Texas and that was a fun game. Texas was a good team to beat.
So we don't want to take up too much of your morning. We've already had a long conversation. I appreciate you being willing to hang out for the entirety of it as you have. One thing I want to ask you is that now you are involved at the high school level of the game. You're a high school coach down there in California right now. When you first became a high school coach, I believe it was Sheldon down in Eugene, correct?
Actually, I came back to my old high school. When I started actually helping coaching my old high school when I was at Oregon, because my first year we didn't go to a bowl game. And so, I'd come back and I used to help out there. So that was kind of like my first taste of coaching, was coming back to my old high school. And then obviously when you're at Oregon, right, you do a lot of like camps and things like that they put on. And so it kind of helped me get my coaching chops up a little bit more. And then fast forward, I helped out a lot when I was a player. I coached a lot. I did offense, defense camps. I helped out at local high schools at the professional teams that I played at, and so I always try to stay connected to the game in the coaching way. In the case that at some point I would maybe coach, or maybe my kids would decide to play the game, and so I could be up to speed on my chops when it comes to the game and schemes and what the newest thing, whatever is going on at the time. But I did eventually start coaching at Sheldon and Thurston High School as well down in Oregon.
So I guess to follow up with that, what took you down to California to coach, and what does that situation day to day look like now?
So our oldest committed to Cal, so he was in the Bay. My wife is from Sacramento. our second kid, our second son, he was a quarterback. And so we were in Seattle at the time. And we were looking to, at Rainier Beach. So, I'm an alumni at Rainier Beach, right? So I know the history and alumni, very proud alumni of Rainier Beach, as I am a proud alumni of Oregon. And if you know about Rainier Beach football, you know that we don't really produce quarterbacks. And a big reason is because we don't have quarterback coaches, right? We don't have coaches that played the quarterback position. And not to say that you have to be a quarterback, but it sure does help. And a lot of the OCs and quarterbacks that have developed in places, a lot of times they're quarterbacks that are over them. And so we didn't have that at Rainier Beach. And so I was kind of looking around. I kind of felt like, we wanted to be closer to our other son. My wife, we've been married, 22 years now. And so she's always been wanting to come back she's a Cali girl, right? She wants a son. She's been dealing with, the lack of sun in the Northwest for a long time. And so finally, I think that conversation started to, intersect and, started looking for jobs in different places, I could coach. And initially, so that's what kind of, had us looking at California because of the mixture of her being from Sacramento, wanting to move back to Sac, and then our son being in the Bay. And then the opportunity or the lack thereof of not having, the right support for our other son. And so we said, we felt like all together, it'd be best to probably transition. And so we ended up transitioning, and I was trying to go. So coming to Seattle, because is my, my community I grew up with, we were able to do a lot of community things and kind of help give back. Well, when we moved down here, we initially wanted to give back to Marysville High School, because that's where my wife ended up moving for high school. She went to Marysville High School from Sacramento, moved to Marysville, went to Marysville High School, got a scholarship, on and on, right? And so we were like, okay, well, maybe we'll go to, they have an opening for a head coach there. So I put my name in, interviewed, explained all the stuff that, this, I'm on a strength conditioning program. This is what we would do, blah, blah, blah. I started going through the vision of the program. And then they decided to go different candidate. and I was like, dang, all right, well, a lot of schools were on that, right? Which is, I think, common, right? They're kind of internal hires. And so I was like, okay, well, then there was this school named Folsom. And Folsom was one of those schools where we have family in the area. We were somewhat familiar because we would visit our family and, we see in the school, so we knew the area. And they had a pretty good football program as well. And so we looked at it and we felt like, okay, the system, it all lines up. It's a kind of a quarterback school, academically, blah, 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 right? Check all the boxes. Decided to make the move. So we made the move. We came down to Cali. Son, played quarterback at Folsom High School. Things ended up working out for him. He ended up getting a scholarship to Stanford. And then I was thinking our youngest, like, we went through 3 kids. He's the youngest, hopefully he's been paying attention. And maybe it might be time to transition, because I did have a desire at a certain point to coach in college. Well, I ended up getting a call. Football's a small world, as you guys know. I ended up getting a call from Coach Robin Ross, who used to be my D-line coach at Oregon. One of the years, I had a different coach every year. But he ended up calling me and saying, hey, a buddy of mine is looking for a D-line coach. Are you interested? Yeah, I think I'm interested. So I'm thinking, all right, Lord, this must be a sign that it's time to transition. All right, cool. Talked to the family. Everybody was good with it. And we're like, probably can do this for about maybe 2 years at the D3 level before I would need to get something that pays a little bit more, right? As a family, right? In this season of my life, it's like, all right, we can do it. We'll sacrifice, and do it. So ended up interviewing for the job, got the job, went up to Lewis and Clark College. That was their D-line coach. Things started to go well. They ended up transitioning me into D-line coach and co-defensive coordinator. And then I worked with a guy named Eric Jackson up there. Things were going great. Statistics defensively changed. They were worse in the league. They ended up being best in the league on all the defensive categories, at least 1, 2, or 3. And then things were going well. And I was like, man, if we're going to do this, kind of getting back to that Oregon mentality, if we're going to do this, we need to do it, right? If I'm going to be here at this D3, we're going to go win D3 national championship. So I'm sitting there talking to my wife, like, hey, you know what? Change of plans. We need to move up here. We could put, our youngest KO into a local high school up there. West Lynn, seeing not too far, there's other schools that are pretty good up there, Central Catholic. So it's like, okay, I'm starting to make all these arrangements because my thought is we're going to move our youngest up here. I'm going to coach. We're going to go win a national championship at the D3 level. And then we're going to figure out what doors will open after that and continue on this journey. Well, then COVID hit. And so I was like, oh man, change of plans. And my son had been calling me and he's like, hey, Dad, I don't know if, if Folsom High School is, because he's in 8th grade right now, right? And he's like, I don't know if that's a good fit for me. And so I'm like, okay, well, let's pray about it. You know what I mean? Let's pray about it and we'll figure it out. And, God will make it very clear on what we're to do. And then once COVID hit, I come back into town. Now, mind you, I'm recruiting the area down in Sacramento. It's my recruiting area because I live here. So I'm flying back and forth like every week. And so, and Seattle's also my recruiting area as well. So I end up, I'm here, and one of the schools that I recruited, I had connected with the AD there, and we had played in the Arena League together when I was in the Arena League. And so, I'm sitting there recruiting his kids. I leave now, plant seed, whatever. I come back, it's COVID, and they had fired their coach. They needed an advancement director, where at the time, I was the defense coordinator at Lewis and Clark, and I was also the athletics advancement director. So he calls me up and says, hey man, I know you're in town. Are you interested in this advancement role? And, we got an opening for the head football coach role too, if you're interested in that. I'm like, man, it's crazy that you said it, because I've been praying about the direction to take, because, D3 national championship ain't in the plans anymore. So what's going on? Put my name in the hat, man. We prayed about it, and man, I ended up getting the job, and my son ended up going to Capital Christian, and off we go, man. Here we are.
Well, congratulations on all your success and your career, and it's great that you're passing that on. I still remember, when you came and spoke, it was like, oh yeah, already Coach Patu out there. So I've got to finish on this question, especially as a defensive guy. Is it really exciting for you to see this new era of Oregon football with a defensive head coach, and especially coming off of one of the best defensive performances we've had this season against Utah?
Man, I love it, man. I think it was a great hire. I just like his energy. I like his vibe. And I might be a little biased because I'm a defensive guy, but the old saying, man, defense, defense wins the game, offense fills the seats. And, for the longest, that philosophy was always about the offense, right? Coach Bellotti was an offensive guy. Chip Kelly was an offensive guy. And we just had a lot of offensive guys there. But at the end of the day, man, you can't win if you can't score, and fortunately on defense, you can also score, so you can do it all, man. And I still, and there might be a difference of opinion, but I still think the best statistic in football is the strip sack. You know what I mean? You get the sack, you get the tackle for loss, right? You get the tackle, you get the forced fumble, you get the fumble recovery, and if you score, you get a touchdown. So it's loaded, man. So I'm excited about the future of Oregon. I'm excited about, the staff up there. I mean, they got Adrian Clem. I was with Adrian in New England when I was a Patriot, and I remember, him doing this thing as a player. So that's cool to see him in that role at our old school, right? So that's pretty awesome. And I know what he's giving to those guys. I know what he's lacing them with when it comes to the game, and really the game within the game. As a player, as a former player, right? Because there's certain things that you just can't teach if you weren't in those shoes, man. And I noticed it. I've always noticed the difference of coaches who did not play that position versus coaches that did. And there's a little more insight in regards to the angles, right? If a guy is taller or lower than, higher or lower than you, whether it be height or whether he's bending his knees, right? So all these little nuances that make a difference when you're a player, and it makes sense, right? It's like, no, when you take that step, you're reading the heel. You're not reading his body, right? Look at his heel. And that's because that's the first thing that's going to move, because he steps with his instep first, right? And so you have all these different reads based upon the position that you're in. And so it's just super insightful. So it's exciting to see a guy like that that's on staff. You've got Tuioti, Tony Tuioti, man, he recruited my son Oren down to Cal, and we were upset to see him leave because he went to Nebraska and then, came to Oregon, and it was like, man, those dudes put together a beastie staff. I mean, that staff is ridiculous. And I just got a chance to meet, the D coordinator when I was up there for, we went up there for a camp, their SNL deal. But just the folks that they have up there, and I apologize to the offensive guys. I don't really pay too much attention to, but I did remember Clem because we were teammates, and so it's just awesome to see, man. I know those guys. If we're gonna get top talent at Oregon, those guys can do it, man, because they're amazing people, and they walk out what they preach, and so you can't, as a player, man, you can't do anything but respect that.
Well, thank you for coming on with us. We really appreciate it. And you're the perfect guy to have on for Civil War Week. So thank you, Saul. Once a duck, always a duck.
Yes, sir.
Go Ducks.
Go Ducks. Appreciate you, man. And you guys have a great day.
Well, that was one of our longest and best interviews. Excited to have that kind of defensive energy and presence back on the show. And man, glad he's into coaching. He's got a lot he could teach.
Oh man, for sure. Saul's one of those guys early on this season. As I said, I knew that we wanted to have him on the podcast early on, and it took a little while to get worked out, but I'm so glad he was able to get in here for this rivalry weekend.
Absolutely. And because it's a rivalry weekend and we had a lot of fun, the UW week of moving our lightning round to being focused on our opponent, we thought we'd move the lightning round right to our usual Twitter portion because it goes quite nicely. So we asked everybody on Twitter what some of their favorite moments from the rivalry formerly known as the Civil War, the Platypus Cup, just the Civil War if you still want to call it that. So we're going to put 2 minutes on the clock for our lightning yellow rounds. We're going to talk about our favorite moments first. And selfishly, I got to start. My very first one I experienced, the 2008 game, man, getting to shut them out of going to the Rose Bowl. Oh, that was a lot of fun. Jeremiah Johnson going off, and I can still hear the exact sound of that run. And you know exactly what it is that I'm talking about. It has nothing to do with football.
Oh man, that game goes down as one of my favorites as well. If you want to find out why, there's an old episode of this podcast you can listen to, season 1, I believe titled Uncivil. You can go check that out to hear more about that 2008 ball game. I'm going to have to say 2009 ball game though, Nick. Obviously, War of the Roses, winning team would go to the Rose Bowl. I remember watching that one in the Baghdad Theater in Portland, Oregon. I remember hearing plenty of stories from you being at that ball game. I'm sure you'll have plenty that you can actually break down having been on the field that night, but a big win for Oregon, a big win in the history of the program. Yeah,
that one was definitely great. Not the greatest game, but on a personal note and for the show, got to have our first Civil War together in 2019. That was a cold game, foggy, a lot of fun, but I still remember the speculation about Justin Herbert and thinking back to that time now and some of the fans that were wondering just how good Justin Herbert is. Man, it's fun to look back how time flies.
Oh man, is it? You know what? If we're going personal notes, I'm going to have to say the very first rivalry matchup I saw in person, Oregon versus Oregon State 2017, the Ducks coming off their first loss in the rivalry in about almost a decade. It had been about 8 seasons at the time. And what do the Ducks do? They come out and demolish Oregon State. I believe final score 69-10, just a complete rout of the Beavers on a record-breaking night for Royce Freeman, an exciting night for everybody involved.
All right, and I'll end it on this one. It's the GOAT for me. I was on the field. Didn't get a lot of playing time that game, but I was on the field for the great Jerry Allen moment when he gives the call. We take the knee, and the Oregon Ducks are going to the national championship game. And yeah, to this day, I still love being out there, being on the field, seeing everybody start going over to that corner to go celebrate right there in Reser Stadium. But here we are. Entirely different game, entirely different stakes, and the Beavers have been pretty damn good at home, all things considered, them basically demolishing half their stadium.
The Beavers have been incredible at home this season. Their only loss being to a USC team that is currently ranked, I believe, number 6 in the nation. So, yeah, those things are going to happen, it turns out. But I will say, it is time for the Twitter answers for our question. We asked Twitter, hey, what was your favorite memories? Let us know your favorite memories from the Oregon State rivalry. And we got a lot of answers. I am very excited to be able to read some of these. Nick, do you want to go first? Do you have any favorites on here?
Yeah, man. The first one that stands out to me is got to go with a former once a Duck guest, being mentioned. At Webfoot Charlie said Keenan Howry's punt return for a touchdown. As soon as he reached the end zone, the rain came down in buckets. We didn't care. It was the game winner, and we had schnapps in our system. It was a great war, and lots of great memories from that one. Loved getting to talk to him about that on one of our previous episodes.
Oh man, that was a fantastic moment. Such a fun ball game won by the Ducks there in the fog, in the rain, in the bad weather. Such a tremendous victory. I'm gonna have to go with an answer from our guy Dylan at rec_it_red196. It's a great ball game. 2013 Oregon versus Oregon State. Marcus Mariota to Josh Huff for the game winner. A 3-touchdown game for Josh Huff. That's another one that I'm pretty sure we have talked about on a podcast. We've had Josh Huff on, so I'm sure we asked about it. Another one folks should go check out, check in on, re-listen to that episode if you haven't.
Yeah, definitely. Well, this one you're gonna have to go check out on Twitter. At Davey Zay. I'm gonna go with that, but said there's only one and had the picture of Marcus Mariota in his Heisman season, basically leaping over an Oregon State Beaver. Just amazing. Not just because of the athleticism, we saw plenty of those from Marcus Mariota back in the day, but one of the best, uniform combinations in this rivalry. Basically, like watching two packets of Starbursts on the field going against each other.
I still stand by the yellow helmet with all green being one of my favorite combinations, if not favorite combinations ever. It's fantastic. Last one I got for you, Nick, from our guy Rand Winter at SportsChat503. He dropped several, but the one that I'm going to pick that he went with, Oregon running back Dino P-Law's 20-yard screen pass for the win back in the 1994 season. Oh my goodness, such a great season that led to a Rose Bowl berth, obviously, but to have such a big play against Oregon State late in the season, always a moment worth remembering.
Yeah, dude. And I loved all the clips he was able to drop in there. Just Ryan always out there dropping the educational info for the Duck fans out there. Make sure you check out his content, Sports Chat 503, and drop in one of those post-game chats or Tuesday chats. Those are a lot of fun. I drop in there a couple times. So make sure you like and subscribe to us, but make sure you check him out too. All right, I got one more. I mean, I've got a bunch more for Keenan Howry, for the 2008 Civil War. Bunch in here, a bunch of repeats, but man, I just got to go with a follow-up to one of Ryan's and say that Dakota_Test said people forget that before they went to Pummel, Colorado in the Fiesta Bowl in 2001, that they just barely beat the Beavs in Autzen. If not for that Keenan Howry touchdown and for a touchdown, they don't go to Tempe. Foggy day as well, if I recall. Go Ducks. And it's like, yeah, I don't think we can even emphasize enough how important that was for the program. And man, it's just awesome how no matter what, this game, it always means something, whether that means what your postseason aspirations are going to be or just the bragging rights for an entire year in the state. It means a lot. And I mean, it feels like right now, even though the Beavers don't have the opportunity necessarily to sneak into the Pac-12 title game, it sure feels like that this is really, really important. The Beavers would love to stick it to the Ducks and keep them out of that Pac-12 title game, probably as much as the Ducks have wanted to keep them out of big bowl games in the past too.
With Oregon State, and we've said this before, but when it comes to the Beavers, there might not be a single loss that hurts more on Oregon's schedule. Beating Washington feels the best. We've said this, but losing to Oregon State just hurts to a degree that is hard to really express, because here's the deal. Beating Washington feels amazing. You're getting one over on the Huskies, and that's amazing. But for folks that live here in the state of Oregon and are up and around all the time, you can't avoid Oregon State fans. They are out and active, and you will see them out in the world. So when you have that W every single year, it makes you feel just a little bit better about that. Losing to Oregon State, it always hurts like heck. But Nick, I mean it when I say this is the most realistic, biggest chance Oregon State's had in my mind for an upset. A better chance than the one that they had back in 2020. A real legitimate upset shot for the Oregon State Beavers in this coming game.
Yeah, back in 2020, Oregon's coming off, the Cal game, and empty stadium, real awkward game, ends right there. Multiple quarterback sneaks on the goal line. We all know how that went. Injury, and that's still affecting Oregon State's program to this day. The injury to Tristan Gebbia, but man, and this team also looks, like one quarterback away from being a really dangerous team that's in contention, that beats that USC team, whether it's at home or away. But unfortunately for the Beavers, they felt like this team finally has that defense that they've been trying to get. And now all of a sudden it's like, you're literally just hoping Jonathan Smith can work his quarterback and offensive guru magic to will this offense into some things. And they've got some interesting trick packages. They do some very, very fun things to watch as a football fan. But I mean, you have to be feeling, as if you're a Beaver fan, like, man, this game could go either way. You have to feel pretty confident at home. But if we just had a quarterback.
Well, and the quarterback who will be taking the field for Oregon State, Branson, he's been all right on the year for sure. 103 of 163, 1,230 yards. He's been about a 63% completion kind of guy. Only averaging 7.5 yards per throw, though. 8 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, been sacked 9 times on the season. Overall, not bad numbers at all, especially for a guy who I don't think any Oregon State fans would have expected to be getting run at the beginning of the year. But being able to pressure him, keep him uncomfortable, will obviously be huge for the Ducks. Anytime he has to drop back, that's a good thing for Oregon, because Oregon State's first plan is to run the ball. Their second plan is to run the ball. And their third plan is also to run the ball. So if you've got them in obvious passing situations, it means you're doing something right, probably on both first and second down.
Yeah, but against, our past defense in previous weeks, if you're Jonathan Smith, you have to be sitting there thinking we could probably get the passing game opened up a little bit more this week. But again, excited to see it. I think the one thing about this rivalry is you can basically throw the record books out. You can throw whatever previous habits these teams might have had in terms of scoring averages. There's just some weird things that happen in this game. And if you got anything left in the playbook, why not run it in this game if you're Jonathan Smith or if you're Kenny Dillingham? So, man, I'm excited. The biggest thing that's really important, besides Bo Nick's health and his ability to hopefully be able to run a little bit more in this game, get a little more comfortable, is can the offensive line continue to gel together and keep him upright, even though the Beavers are going to be bringing a lot of pressure. And I mean a lot of pressure, not just, simulated pressure, or not just bringing extra guys, but sometimes just trying to confuse you, get your eyes going in the wrong direction. And Oregon State's been really good at that on the defensive side of the football this year. And then you also have to deal with, even if there's only 26,000 there, still have that chainsaw on third down, man. That thing is always, so annoying. So annoying, whether you're on the field or, there in the stands, or even if you just happen to hear it on TV. It's one of those things, like you said, makes the possibility of losing them that much worse. And 2020, man, I can only imagine how awful that atmosphere was without the crowd to drown that thing out too. Oh.
Well, and I don't know if you heard this, but apparently Lanning had staffers walking around practice on this week, just revving up chainsaws nonstop through everything going on. So that was, according to Mace Funa, quote, very annoying. So I can 100% understand that. You don't want to be hearing that, but a big reason you might be hearing that, it's going to be this Oregon State run game. They've got a backfield that is extremely talented, up there with anybody in the Pac-12, and it's led by a freshman. The freshman Martinez, he is an absolute stud for them. 867 yards on the year. So you know he is really going to want to have an absolute blowout performance, get to that 1,000-yard mark. He's got 7 touchdowns on the year, 6 touchdowns for Fenwick as well. Griffin's been running the ball, and Jack Coletto was running like a madman, whether it was as a fullback, as a running back, as a wildcat quarterback, played some tight end, played some linebacker, played on some special teams. He got injured a couple weeks ago. I'll be very curious to see what his status looks like come Saturday. But Oregon State's running attack, that's what they want to hit you with first and foremost. It always is, especially this game against the Ducks. Do you think Oregon's D-line is going to be able to have the kind of performance they did against Utah, and will that slow down Oregon State?
Well, I think they're going to have to. Oregon State has one of the better coached and more successful offensive lines in the pack, and they do. They are able to establish a lot of new and young runners. It feels like, just because of the combination of good offensive line play and Jonathan Smith being a really great offensive mind. Man, I think they're going to have to, for this to be a game. You're going to be going in there. This is biggest game of the year for Oregon State. Has to be, other than USC even coming in there, I think. And especially with the Ducks being, highly ranked coming in, and just has to be them just licking their chops just to be able to get this opportunity. So I think it's going to be all up front for the offense and the defensive line. And of course, ball security. Both, being able to get takeaways and keeping the ball secure, hopefully more in this game than we did against Utah, because, man, if you are there in Corvallis and having that kind of turnover you did at the beginning of the third quarter, that is a very, very tough sway of momentum to be able to overcome. It's easy to do in Autzen, but doing that on the road, even if you're up by, 2 scores, that could be the difference in the ball game, and you may not be able to get that momentum back. So securing the football, especially in the cold weather, going to be huge in this game. But hey, I'm excited to see it. I'm ready to see it play out. Are you ready for predictions, Sam?
I'm ready for predictions, Nick. It's gonna be a tough one to predict, because I know I'm just so thinking about this Oregon State defense, such a really cohesive, strong group, and just how talented that back end is, with guys like Grant, who has 3 interceptions on the season, Cooper Jr. with 3 interceptions on the season, 2 apiece for Austin and Wright. A really, really talented group, but it is that time. It is time for predictions. Time to let them know what's going to happen. Why don't you start this thing? I'll close it and we can get out of here.
Well, man, it's going to be a 12:30 kickoff. These teams are both going to be excited. I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. I hope both teams are well rested, and maybe Bo Nix's ankle gets a little more extra treatment with all the extra time and downtime with the holidays. But man, I'm really predicting we can see a little more of the rushing game this week on the road, and I'm hoping to see Bo Nix a little bit healthier. I'm predicting Oregon wins this game 31-24.
I'm smiling because our picks are eerily close yet again this week, which is how I know that we're probably about in the right spot. Oregon's offense, I expect them to be a little bit more fluid this week. They really better be. Bo Nix, a little bit healthier. He said on Tuesday he was feeling a whole lot better than he was last Tuesday. Last Tuesday, I didn't think he was going to play. This week, he's more than confident he will. So I feel good about that. Running attack has to be better. Receiving core, they have to just continue to do what they've done. But I think 31 points, very achievable for the Ducks. They can get it done, especially if they play clean. Oregon State's running offense is such a problem. They're going to get scores. They're going to get points. I think they're going to get about 28, though. It's going to be dramatic. It's going to come down to the end. Maybe game-winning field goal. We'll see what happens. 31-28 Ducks.
Well, I love it, and I'm excited to see it. I hope it plays out. I hope one of us is right. But, man, it's just not much more you can say. Go Ducks. I'm excited. I think, getting the 12:30 out of the way, being able to see how the rest of the Pac-12 plays out is going to be a lot of fun. And not going to look forward to next week. But if you guys want to give us some ideas for some guests who you'd want to see on next week's episode, we'd love to hear it. Don't think we're going to be having Mark Asperon by breaking our streak last year. But hey, either way, once a duck, always a duck. Thanks to everybody who's tuned in. And man, if you are going to the game, be loud for us, man. Be loud for us. Sam, I know you're thinking of going.
If I can get there, I will.
All right. Well, hey, for everybody that is going, keep repping our ducks. Don't let those beavers yell too loud, and hopefully we quiet them down. Talk to you guys next week.